All right, we continue to unpack Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's 2024 medium-term budget policy statement. Mixed reactions, but the theme, of course, has clearly been one of forging ahead with structural reforms to ensure we see the much-needed growth, because it seems the country's debt is increasing at a far higher rate than the growth, economic growth rather. And Chapu Chartered Accountant CEO Ncumisa Mkunqwana joins us to talk and unpack just this. Good afternoon, Ncumisa. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. So as we've heard, the trade-offs and choices that the nation is confronted with in charting the path towards growth and transformation are difficult but necessary. Let's start with your views on the forecasted real GDP growth of 1.1% in 2024 and the strategy that was presented of 4 pillars to lift the economy to a higher and more inclusive growth path.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so as you say, the growth path is not on a very high, it's very small in terms of what was expected. And the focus, and I think even the theme, is on ensuring that the economy grows and that inclusive growth path and the areas that they're focusing on. So really the reason for the fact that the economy is not growing, even in the international markets, if you look at the international markets, they're also not growing. So it's not just South Africa that's not growing as well. And looking at if you look at the tax revenue targets, so for the tax revenue, they actually didn't meet. There was 22.3 billion in terms of the SARS target that was there for the revenue collection. So they actually did not meet the target. So they obviously need to focus on the strategies to what government is really doing is focusing on reducing debt. So we've got about 6 trillion worth of debt that we are owing. And as a result, as the minister indicated, in that trillion, for example, if you're spending 1 rand as government, 22 cents of that 1 rand actually goes through
to service the debt, which is honestly unsustainable, because that's 75% of our GDP between 2025 and 2026. So the strategies that we've heard today that they presented to curb this debt that's running away, I mean, it's getting higher or growing at a far higher rate than our economic growth. Were you convinced with the strategies that were presented?
Yeah, so the strategies, I must say, I wouldn't say they're new. So they're not new strategies. So even if you look back to the budget that was the February 2024 budget that was presented, it was things that they were focusing on already as government. So it's not things that are new, but I think it's more focusing especially on the spending side, and the initiatives that they are putting in place is to actually ensure that we reduce on the spending and we spend on the right things, as government. So spending on the right things to ensure that we're able to grow. And also, I think everyone has got it within the value chain. Everyone has responsibilities in terms of what they need to do. So they highlighted in terms of the local government has a responsibility for us to pay what they're owing to Eskom, what they're owing for the Water Services Board, because that is also part of service delivery.
If we had to be a little, pardon me for interjecting just in the interest of time. Ncumisa, if we had to be a little more granular with some of these spending or the spending on the right things, among the strategy to grow the economy is supporting growth enhancing infrastructure. We heard how Governor number 8, the late Dito Mboweni, had spoken of the next few years being defined as the infrastructure years, and government is in agreement with this, but they've decided not to embark on this infrastructure investment drive on their own, but to mobilize funds as well as technical expertise from the private sector. Do you believe this is the right path?
In my view, yes, I think it's the right path, because remember, you need certain skills. So in terms of infrastructure, we know we've got a lot of backlog in our infrastructure. Our infrastructure is quite old. It needs a lot of work. So we've got a lot of skills within South Africa that we can actually utilize. And I think government is using the approach of collaboration. So they're actually trying to collaborate with different people within the infrastructure that would have the skill to support government. And I think also, if you look, they also talked about the procurement, trying to be more transparent with the procurement processes. So that will also ensure that the monies that they're getting value for their money. So in terms of getting funds or utilizing those private partnerships, they actually following the right processes. So if you look at, I think they're trying to ensure that there's no irregular expenditure, there's no fruitless and wasteful expenditure that normally would be identified in those projects. So I'm really hoping that that will actually assist in improving the infrastructure. And also, there will also be jobs as well, because to run these projects, you obviously need people. So they're also looking at jobs. Also touching on the jobs, they also talked about reducing the jobs, or for people that can take early retirement, but ensuring that you're still keeping the skills, because you still need the finance management skills, especially in the municipalities or the local government, if I can put it like that.
There's also the other aspect of implementing structural reforms. The question is, has Operation Vulindlela, according to you, been able to demonstrate how economic bottlenecks can be addressed when government collaborates with the private sector?
Yeah, so I think the minister highlighted a number of positives coming out from Vulindlela.
Yeah.
The fact that in terms of now the e-visa systems that are in place, so really getting access to South Africa, because also some of the skills we might have in South Africa, but some we actually need. So if you also you remove those bottlenecks to make it easier to trade with South Africa, getting the different skills that are sitting in other, because remember, South Africa, we're not alone. There's been work in a global perspective. So those skills can actually assist us with growth in South Africa. So I think he had highlighted those in terms of the positives that he saw coming out from Vulindlela. And also, if you're looking at the water initiative, so water is also a problem that we have as a country. So we also need then those water skills, or people that have those skills, to actually assist us to ensuring that we have the basic services for government to deliver and support the community at large.
We've also heard that phase 2 of Operation Vulindlela will of course include the finalization of the opening of that freight rail network to private operators to reduce the inefficiency as well as costs. How significant a move is this one for our economy?
I think it's a good move. So remember, Transnet is still, they didn't really focus so much on Transnet. So I think in the February budget, when now they're doing for the new year, they'll probably provide more details in terms of the role that Transnet will play in that. So transport and logistics are important in the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, it will also assist in terms of, we use quite a lot of road trucks in terms of now moving goods within South Africa, or even, so we've got ports that can be linked to our rail, and that could actually help us to reduce costs to the consumer as well. So I see it in a positive light in the sense that if we then if we then include the private sector and people, but I think it's important that the people that we are giving, or we are partnering with, or the government is partnering with, it's people that must have the right skill. So they must have the appropriate skill to actually address the problem and not make the problem worse. So I think that's quite important as well, as they consider that.
Ncumisa, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Chapu Chartered Accountant CEO Ncumisa Mkunqwana joining us.